Hi there. Welcome to the channel. My name is Alana, and I'm the creator of the Health Analytic Insights podcast, where I interview guests and talk all things health informatics.
In this video, we're going to get into the data cleaning portion of building the clinical business intelligence portfolio. I would definitely suggest watching the previous video to understand why we're building this project, what are the key performance metrics we'll be integrating into this project, and more. So make sure you check out the last video. So hopefully from the last video, you were able to download Power BI Desktop. And when you open the Power BI Desktop application, you should come to the report view pane. And now the first thing that we want to do is actually import our data into Power BI. So what we're going to do is go to Get Data, and we're going to import our Excel document into Power BI. And we're going to choose the specific table we're interested in looking at. So we have this preview here of the data. And we see that we need to do some data cleansing work. We have these commas after the patient address. The patient date of birth is not in the correct format. And so we know that we're going to have to do some data cleaning. So we're not going to load the data into Power BI because this would just load it into the report view. We want to open Power Query Editor, which is what happens when you select transform data. Now I'm just going to repeat these steps again. So when you go to get data, you'll see that there are multiple different data sources that you can connect to into Power BI Desktop. So you can connect to a SQL Server database, you can connect to a CSV form, the web, even Google Analytics. There are multiple different connections that you can use to transform your data into Power BI. So we're just going to go to the Excel workbook again, connect. I'm going to choose the Excel workbook. Then we're going to select the table of interest and then transform data to open the Power Query Editor. And this is where we're going to do the majority of our data cleaning. So the Power Query Editor has many different transformations that you can do. You can add columns to your existing data set. You can transform existing columns. And there are lots of duplication of different transformations that you can do. For instance, if you select the column and you right click, you will see you can unpivot columns. You can also see that you can unpivot columns here. So you can see that there's a lot of duplication of different transformations that you can do in Power Query Editor. So that's really handy as well. But before we do anything, we're going to save our work. And you'll get this prompt if you want to apply. So this will load the data set again into that report view, but we don't want to do that. We want to carry out all our transformations and then we'll hit apply and then load our clean data set into the report view. So we'll just select apply later for now. And we'll give this Power BI report a name. We'll save that. And now we'll get into our data cleansing steps. So when we look through our data, it can sometimes be difficult to see the nulls or the blanks that might exist. So what we can do is we can go to View and then select Column Distribution and Column Profile. And this is a great functionality in the View section because you can see how many empty null values. So we see that there's around 20 that we're going to have to deal with. We can select another column and see that this one has no nulls. So you can really get an understanding of the distribution and the statistics of your column that you're loading into the data. So as we go through this, the first thing that kind of pops out at me is that we have these trailing white spaces. And this can be common when you're entering in data. Sometimes people have extra spaces. If we right click, transform, and go to trim, or we go to transform, format here, and then we can make everything lowercase or uppercase. There's a lot of transformations you can do to text data. And so we'll just select trim. And this will remove leading and white spaces from each cell. And so you see the transformation is done. And we can do it repeated here, but we'll right click, go to transform, and then trim. And we'll see that that changed the data set as well. So another thing is that we have first name and last name. We might want to concatenate the first name and the last name into one just a name column, just to reduce duplication of the data. So what we can do for that is we select the first column and then hit Control, and then select the next column. That will select both of them. And again, in the transform ribbon, we can see merge columns is an option. You can concatenate these two columns together. So we want to have a separator of space. So we'll choose that, and we'll change the name to just patient name. Then hit OK. And then we've concatenate the first and last name into one column. So for the patient identifier, we're going to change this to text. And then the patient date of birth, we see that this data type is whole number. Data type is here's whole number, and it should really be a date format. So how we do that is we could either change it right here, go to data type, and then change it to just date, or again we can right click, change type to a date format. So here we see patient date of birth, and we can actually get the age because we have the patient date of birth and we know today's date, so we can get the patient's age from this. So we can just go to add a column, go to date and age. One mistake would be to go to, if we're in transform and then select age here, this is going to replace the column here. So we don't want to do that. We still want to have the patient date of birth date information. We just want to have an additional age column. So we're going to go to add column instead of transform, and then select date and then age. Then this gives us the age, and then we see it's in a timestamp format. So we want to change that into total years. And then we want to round that down to get the patient's current age. So we have this extraneous information that we don't need. So again, we'll select this first column, select Control, select the next column, and you can either press Delete, or you can, if we go back to here, we can select age and total years, right click, and then remove columns. Then we'll just move this over to the patient date of birth, and we'll change the title to patient age. So you'll see on the right-hand side, this applied steps feature, and this is a really great part of Power BI because basically all of the steps that all the transformations that you do are saved in these applied steps, and you can delete steps or reorder steps to different locations. And this is really beneficial because if you're sharing your report with another data analyst, they can understand the steps that you took, and you don't necessarily have to take the time to explain exactly how your report was built. They can just go and follow the applied steps. In addition, you can do further documentation by right-clicking on whatever the step is, going to Properties, and then you can type a description. Select OK, and then you'll see a little information tab will pop up here. And so this is great for documentation and sharing your report with other analysts. So now we just want to go through and make sure that our data types are correct for all of our columns. We have patient date of birth, that's good. Patient address is text, hospital name is text. We have the admission type, which is date time, which is good. The discharge time, remitted, yes, no, and then patient satisfaction. So we're just going to change this because it's going to be a survey to a text, and that'll be good. So now all our data types in our columns are in the correct format. So now we're going to do some more formatting. I'm seeing this random comma in the patient address. And as I said before, these kind of weird data formats are quite common when you have manually entered data, which is quite common with healthcare data. So we can transform this by splitting the column by delimiter, and we'll choose the comma. We'll select OK. We want to split the column by the comma. And then we see we have two columns here that has been split by. We're going to delete this column here because we can't have two columns named the same name. And we're going to change this to patient address. So that's fixed now. We're going to now just look generally through our data. It's looking good. It's looking good. Then we're going to use conditional formatting to kind of make this more intuitive, because right now we just have YN. And if someone is reading this from the dashboard and they just see YN, they might be confused by what it means. So we're going to add a conditional column, which will describe the rows a bit better. So basically, we can use if and then statements. Contains Y, then yes, patient readmitted, else no, patient not readmitted. And we can change this to readmission rate. Again, this is a really helpful little if-then function that allows you to change the rows within your column quite easily. Again, we see readmission rate. We will delete this column. I'm going to copy this header here. Then I'll delete this column, remove, and then I will select twice and then change that to the title. And then we're going to change the data type format to be text. And lastly, this null values in the column are a bit confusing. We don't know if that's a no response or the person didn't enter in the information. So in this situation, we'll assume that it is a no response for the patient satisfaction score. And we will right click and use replace values. So instead of null, we will replace this with no response. And then we'll select OK. And we'll see that this has been changed within our column. So I hope this quick data cleansing tutorial has been helpful for you to understand some of the functionality in the Power Query editor and how you can manipulate your data from a messy data set to something that's more clean and ready for data visualization. So in the next video, we will be creating the Power BI dashboard with this now cleaned data set. So see you in the next video.